We'd like to introduce you to the all-new Parametric painting plugin for exclusive use with Planswift, the #1 estimating software. We'll open up our plugin. First we'll focus on the location we're going to be looking at, and we'll open up our plugin. Our plugin now is a completely independent screen of what you'll see in Planswift. We do mimic the tree on the left-hand side here with the different locations and assemblies. This is broken down by location. These are locations already entered into the system. And now we want to come and add a new location, so we'll click the Add button. We'll come up here and add the location. We have an area here for the drawing reference, so in case you print the Takeoff later, we'll be able to come back and refer to it. The field for a group is meant for alternate prices, separate prices, phases, anything that you might want to separate this particular room from the entire estimate, for whatever reason. And then we have an area here for notes that you can apply to that location, not the entire job, but this specific location, whatever those might be. And we come down here and select the floor to ceiling height. Make this 10 feet for the time being. Perimeter and area will be calculated once we do our digitizing back here. But before we do that, this is what is new and exciting within our software. I can come in here now, and from my paint assemblies, now these are user defined. The nomenclature might not be custom to what you're using, but they can be all built up here under the paint library. So I would come in here, and under gypsum board interior, I want to pick interior wall finish one side. So I'll double click, and that information has been added. I can come up here and now select the actual paint finish manufacturer, so maybe it's Sherwin-Williams latex interior. We've also got a space down here that will let you input the paint code from the project, and that will break down the gallons of each type of paint required by the time you complete your estimate. Next, we want to come down and we want to select the next item. Now we might have in this area maybe wood flooring, so I'll double click on wood flooring, and that's been added. We might also have some moldings within that room. Let's say there's a crown molding. I can double click and add the crown molding, and maybe some baseboard, so I'll double click and add the baseboard. So these are all items within the room that can be calculated parametrically by one digitizing to return the quantities that are required for this. So if I come up here, I can now go to digitize. I could have also right clicked and clicked to digitize. We're going to come up here and we're going to go digitize, and now I come in and do our typical measurement within Planswift. We want to come down and take the area of that particular room. Sure you've all done this before. And come up here and stop recording. And once that happens, you'll see that all the quantities get returned. Now here we've got the quantity, which is the actual coverage area. So 704.7 would be the perimeter times the height. That becomes your quantity. And then we also allow you an area of input information for the coverage. So here we've taken a prime coat, and we've allowed for 3 coats within that room. Now this selection here is made when you build your library item and brought forward to the project to satisfy the requirements of pricing. Now if for any reason the project might have changed, you can come in here and change the number of coats. You'll notice that parametrically the numbers change over on this side and give you the different requirements for cost and for the gallonage required for that particular item. That can be done with any of these items that we've got here. Now you can build as many of these library items as you want. Anything that applies within the room, anything that you're able to go in and take the area of that room will allow you to parametrically price all the requirements of that room. Now with that, we've also got items within that room that might not be able to be measured parametrically, if you will. For example, we might have, I'm going to go to this lower grid. The upper grid, to explain, is all your parametric requirements. The lower grids are one-of-a-kinds or special counts on particular items. So in this case, I'm going to come to the lower grid. I'm going to double click. This is a paint interior door. Again, our nomenclature, you can input whatever you normally or typically use for that. But if I double click, Now I've got a door in that area. I'll come down and I'll select the finish for that door. I can also come up here and put in the paint finish for it. I could also go back up on top here and complete the other paint finishes. They could be all the same or they could be different, but they're there for you to put in, and it will read out for you later the total gallonage on the project for each color, and that's one of the benefits that we've got here. So just going back to the lower grid again, it's single items that are required. Also with that door, we might have an interior door frame, so I'm going to click focus in the lower level and click on door frame. There's my door frame, and again I will pick the material, and let's say that we've got Benjamin Moore latex for there, and the actual finish on that is going to be a PT number 11. Okay, and then to calculate your quantities here, you would right click. Okay, or again, you can go to the digitize because you're focused in this area. I would go digitize, and I'll click once and stop recording to return a count of 1 with all my calculations, and the same thing for the door frame itself. And I'll come here and click for the door frame. Stop recording, and it'll return the count here. So now I've got a complete count of single items in the lower grid, parametrically everything that's required in the upper grid itself. Now, if I had to come and add another item into this upper grid, I could do so. Let's say you've got some CMU interior application, a little extreme, but to give you just an example of it, we can add that in, and you can see because we've already digitized, all the calculations are already done for you. When you're first bringing these elements in, these assemblies in, it's not going to have the quantity until you go up and hit the digitize button. It does require the floor to ceiling height on a room or location, and it will generate the perimeter and generate the area that's required. If at any time you want to refresh the numbers, we can come up here and hit a refresh button just to make sure that everything's been refreshed properly. And then we can add the items down below, which are a one of type of count on any location. And then we can jump around to the next area or next location. In this particular room, I wanted to go and take a look at it. Well, I've already taken that off, so I'm good with that. We'll come and look at this room. Same thing again. We've done our takeoff in this room, and everything's complete, or I could come down and add an additional item. And then for pantry, well, there's a room that's not completed at this point. It has been put in, say, as a rough takeoff item. I could go room by room and actually take the room number, the room reference, any specific information required by that room and so on, and bring it back and put it into the header, and then add an additional room. And then you can come back later and actually do the digitizing and adding assemblies required for that room. But let's say in this room here, we're going to go back in again, and we're going to put in the paint wall one side. Maybe we've got also in there paint interior ceiling. Okay, now the interior ceiling's got a different formula than the wall does. It's going to take area, whereas this is going to take the perimeter times the floor to ceiling height of the location. Now we can select the material. In the upper grid, as we select it on the one location, it will populate all other like items for it. If something changes, you can change those singularly and be able to calculate the proper material for that. With that, we'll come down and maybe put a little bit of wood baseboard in there. There we go, there's our wood baseboard. And then again, we can come up and we can digitize on that room. Now that's that pantry. Now I've got to move over to that pantry, which is right here. And I can come in and actually do my calculation by digitizing with the Planswift feature. Stop recording, return, and you can see here all the quantities have been generated for you. It inputs the perimeter, the area, perimeter times the floor to ceiling height will give you your area for your walls, and then your baseboard is kept singularly, for the perimeter, based on the perimeter. And then each is based on a calculation. For example, we've got a 6-inch base, so it's half of what the area is. Whereas here, we've got 4 times the coverage, 4 times the 600 for 2400 because of the prime and 3 coats. But all of that is auto-generated in the calculations that you've got in here. And we'll put in the finishes for that. And then again, in the lower grid, we can come down and we can select single items as a door frame. And then come in and pick the finish for that. And then of course, right click to digitize. We can come and digitize that room and return. And know that we've got that information all automatically calculated. Okay, so this upper area is the all new and exciting, that sort of dynamic parametric pricing that we're trying to introduce, to the market, for your help in completing your estimates. Now, from this point, to complete the estimate, we can go up to what we call bid summary. And this is an area where, as I told you, we can calculate all the gallonage required for the project. We can give you the type. We can give you the finish broken down separately with the cumulative quantities. In this area, we didn't put in the finish. That's why that's missing. So we'd have to go back and put that in. We can also make this material in the upper section here taxable by merely clicking the boxes here if it is a taxable requirement by the project, or leave it unclicked and there would be no tax added. We've got the number of hours that are required times the rate that we've put into our setup. This is our company setup in the background here. So we've got our hours set up and extended. We can, at any level here, add a markup. Okay, now overheads and profits are placed at the back end here, but there might be a markup that you might want to put here or here for whatever reason, and that is there and possible for you. The next tab we would go to would be for a buyout item, for example. Let's say we had to buy some specialty wall covering. It's bought out as a sub-trade, as a lump sum number, and that can be placed here. It can be made taxable or not, and we can also add a separate markup as required. So any singular item that might be required by the project to be put in here, a custom piece of artwork or anything that is singular and not put in the Takeoff itself, can be placed here. We've also got a tab for lift rentals. That'd be the equipment tab. For example, you've got one lift rental, you can put in $1,500 or whatever the amount is. You can add a markup and the extended price, and again, taxable or not taxable. The grand total is always at the bottom for that page. Also a requirement on most commercial type projects is the general conditions. This is an area where you can put things in, like for example, a cash allowance. Contract documents ask you to put in $5,000 for future work or for cleanup or for whatever reason, and that's when you can apply that value. Or if you've got travel, you could put in nights of travel as required. You could put in plane tickets. You could add in here for extra supervision or project management. It's endless what you can add onto this sheet to get you to where you need to be for your final number. And then finally, we've got the overhead and profit. So we're taking our materials, labor, our buyouts, equipment, and general conditions, all the items from each of the tabs, and we can declare what overhead and what profit we want for each one of those items. Now, the 10% is the default setting that you've set up again back here in your company setting, but at the project level, you can override that and change that to be whatever you want. If you were to go in and uncheck one of the boxes, you could come up top here and put in a value rather than putting a percentage, and that'll be all calculated in. Or if you click the box here, it would be looking for a percentage. So that's all open-ended for you to do whichever way you want to handle that. And we've also calculated the sales tax. Again, it's a default setting from from the company setup. We're going to show you shortly the project information. It can be overwritten in the project information, or it can be overwritten here for you on the bid summary screen. So our value for this project is $31,051.95. So from here, I'm going to return now. And now we're at a point where we want to go in and we want to confirm this to our client. We come up here to our scope letter, and our scope letter is set up to be a list of the contractors that are bidding the project. It has their contact information with their phone number, so we could call if need be. And it brought forward that final value that we had on the bid summary. Now, with every contractor, there's a reason for possibly a different pricing over and above standard markups, overheads, and profits. So for example, you might like this guy. This guy might pay slow, so you might want to add 5% to the price. This guy might be a little bit of a troublesome individual, and you might want to add more money to his price. And this individual here might shop your price. Now, I'm saying no, this is the same as the first contractor, but you could put in 20% for it. So that just gives you a complete example of how you could alter your pricing. This is the price that will go on to your actual confirmation letter, and not the price that's been generated by the computer. With that letter, we can also go in and we can set up our opening statement however we want it. It does come from a default in the company setup initially. The same with the closing statement for the project. This would be the footer or closing statement. At the bottom of the report, we can place a mission statement or an address if it's not included in your letterhead. And then we can further go to print the scope letter as just a letter. It would be a 2-page letter. We can include a copy of the takeoff without pricing. We can include a copy of the takeoff with pricing, and a copy with pricing and all the general conditions and equipment, shown separately, as we've seen on that particular screen. So if I go in here and give you, for example, the first selection and come over and select one contractor that we want to send the letter to, you can do multiples, but for now we'll just do one, and we can come up and print. We can also come into the tabs that we've got here and further define the project as well. So we do have our opening statement, our closing statement, but what do we want to say in the body? So first off, it's going to be furnish and install 9900 painting, and then any description that you want to type in here to explain what you're doing. And that's a user sort of input. Now, with the other reports that I mentioned, takeoff with pricing, that would be something work areas as per attached breakdown. Now, even though you can put a brief description here, you can give a detailed breakdown of what you're doing in each room, each location, when printing from one of the other reports up top here. We've got an area for alternates, if there were things to be added, deleted, or separate prices. We have an area for items not included. I find this the most important in any estimate, and it could be typical default settings that you're using, again from company, and you can go in and add anything new that would be relative specifically to this project. And then finally, the final tab, which is clarifications. And just so you know, each one of these do print out when you go to your actual letter. So this is where the body of your letter is coming from. Here's a case whereby 2 of the paint colors have not been specified, so we might put an allowance in for it, so it will continue to let us price the project. If they come in way high, then we'd have an opportunity to possibly charge additional money for it. This is also an area where we can put terms and conditions. You might have a 2-page set of conditions that you might want to apply to every quotation or every estimate, and this is where you can put that in. It could contain payments, warranty, prices valid, your indemnification on the project, clarifications for color variation, lien act, governing state. It's an arm length of information that you can place in here. Now again, it can be set up in the company setup. It will copy to each new project, and you can edit each new project. Okay, and then from there we would go in, and I can come back up here to print, and we have a print reporter now that will give us your letterhead, so we can input again under company your graphic letterhead JPEG file, so it'll print on your form all the address information, the opening statement, the items included, and all the way through down to the items not included and clarifications, and the terms, just the way that you saw them, on the screens themselves, with the price that you were looking to provide this contractor. Now, that can also be sent directly from this application by email. So we click send it by email. It will have your return address, again, because you've set it up under company. It will have the to-person, because under the contractor, this individual has got his email in the address book. You're going to carbon copy yourself. It's got the project name, and you can place here any information as far as a letter body that you might want to, put in. Attach fine quotation. Okay, and this is the file that has been saved. Okay, that was printed into a PDF format and saved. That will be sent once you hit the send button, and this will go off to them. And of course, you can copy yourself. You can multiple email multiple recipients just by putting a colon and putting additional information in, or for multiple occasions, for yourself. So that will allow you to email it directly out of the application. Okay, so that's your scope letter. Now let's go back. Now that we've seen the basic operation of the system, let's give you a little bit of background information. So under company, if we open up the company setup, it will let us go in and attach our letterhead and logo to be used on all the reporting. We're going to put our specific company information in, and we're going to put our default settings in for our labor rates, as are we going to put our overhead and profit default setting and sales tax. So every time you start a new project, these are the values that will be brought in. However, you can override those by the project. Email configuration for being able to send out your emails has to be placed here. Your default headings for your opening statements on your scope letter, closing statement, and also your mission statement and address. The scope information, alternates, items not included, so those 3 items would go to every letter you would add or delete from there. And then clarifications, and as I mentioned, terms and conditions might be the most important one that you might want to put in there. That also could be put under scope closing statement. This could be put into this area as well. It just depends on how you want to set up your actual scope letter, if you will. Okay, so moving on. Now by project, even though we've set this up as a company setup for global, every project to start with, now the project has its own screen. And this is going to have all the information that's going to set up the project, location. You're going to call up a date picker and pick the bid date. We have an area for bid status. Now these can be self-entered. It's user defined by clicking this little button here. So there's a series of them from on ITB to taking off, pricing, ready, review. You can even put in responses, waiting. And I think I got a 75% chance of getting this job, where I'm waiting for a word on it and I have a 25% chance. Or I got a verbal commitment, or I've got an award and successful on the project. So all of that can be entered here. If there are more headings, just click this little button and you're able to add additional items as required through that list. Okay. Each project will allow you to put in information regarding the project. For example, this is a very tough architect, so we want to say that for common use, and you want to watch the specs and follow them to the letter, because this guy is very tough. In an operation where you've got multiple estimators, you can set up and you can choose the estimator that's working on the project. And then, as I said, we can override now the labor rates, the tax rates, and all the overheads and profits that you are going to be using on this particular project. Now you can override them here, or they can be overridden when you get to the actual bid summary. If you can recall back here, that's where the entry goes. So we can do it in either location, and that will keep our pricing up to date. Okay, and then while we're building our bidders list, we just merely come down, we pull down from our address book, and we select a contractor. And some contractors have multiple contacts, so we can pull down and select the specific contact that might be involved in that project. So all of that is there for you, to use and develop all your information for the project. Okay. Now the paint libraries, the paint assembly libraries, is very simple for you to use. You would come in and you would indicate your nomenclature for that assembly. You would give it a description, what we call number 1. We do have space for a secondary description as well, but you want to give it a description so everybody knows what that is. That can be used in your scope letter. Customers might not know what your nomenclature is, but they will know what description number 1 is, so you can select that to print. You can also, in the tree that we have on the left side here, allocate where you want to put these particular items. Now you can add additional settings or headings if you want down here, and then add additional library items that reside under them. In this case, we'll go gypsum board interior. We want to figure our pricing based on square feet. Our labor hours would be a value that you input. This is just a ghost figure that we've got in here right now. So you would put in your hours per square foot that you would be charging, and then it would be extended by the rate. When we're doing assemblies, we have several different ways of calculating the formulas when we come to the parametric pricing. So we could do a perimeter one side, we could take the perimeter and do 2 sides. We could take the actual assembly, as in a door versus a door frame. Door frame would be an assembly one side, the door would be 2 sides. Or if you're doing the floor and ceiling, you would look at something like the plan area one side. Typically, we did also include plan area 2 sides if for any reason you did need to use that. So with each one of these, you're allowed to mix and match one of these headings to come up with your calculations that are needed for the parametric pricing. Now we can prime, and we can indicate what our default number of coats are for that application. But as you remember, you can change the number of coats in the project if they vary from what your default setting is. And we can merely come over and add an additional item, or we can delete items as need be. And then there's all the headings that we've got in at this point. Headers, even preparation. We can include something for, gypsum board repairs, for, covering with visqueen. All of that can be calculated by square footages and so on. So that's all there for you. Okay. So that being our paint assembly library. And then one of the second last items to look at would be actual materials. I could come in here and do the same thing as my paint assemblies, assemble my materials. So my item code, which would be what I pull down and select, would be a Sherwin-Williams latex interior. They are the manufacturer. I can put in a model or product number. I can select the heading that I want it to reside in over on this side in the tree, and I can add additional headings. We can put a description in of that material, a full written description if you want. This is the date of last revision. So the last time I updated the price per gallon of that material was on the 14th of February. We've also indicated that our coverage recommended is 300 square feet per gallon. It is by the gallon and a price per gallon. We do have an area for waste factor. If you do need to calculate some waste in there for material, you have the ability to add a percentage there, which will increase the price value to get you to where you need to be. And that will return the price per square foot that'll be used in the parametric calculation. And again, we also have an area down here at the bottom for notes. We can collapse the tree, we can expand the tree, we can add items, we can delete items. The items are not actually deleted, they're actually put into an archive mode in case they exist on a prior estimate, and we do need to have those for reference. We also got in the system an address book, and this is used primarily for the scope letter, being able to send out the information with the contact information. And it's also used in the project info for the estimator, so we can place the estimator's name in here. And then we've also left an area for vendors. If you want to use this as an address book for vendors, then you're more than welcome to do that. And very simply, we'd come in and we would fill in the company name, all their address information, phone number, website, and we would select the category that they'd be working under over here and select the appropriate one so that it appears. Again, we have an area for notes, and down at the bottom now you can indicate all the people from that organization. So one company could have 1 to 10 different contact people which can be selected. Not as important for architect, but when you get to the contractors, I don't know what we've got here. Now we don't have one with more than one entry at this point, but that can be added. Just merely go in and fill in the information for that. Now we can also export a template to populate this address book, and then import that template to automatically populate this area rather than entering everything one at a time. That's a template that could be created from Outlook or created from your accounting type of software or ERP software. We can also print a single contact, and we can print all of your contacts as a sort of an address book by clicking the button down below here. And we'll return out of there. This is our typical return button to get us back to the prior screen. So that's basically our painting plugin. Again, the upper grid is done parametrically. You would indicate all the items that are required, everything that's required by that room, and then you would come up and hit digitize, provided you've got the ceiling, floor to ceiling height indicated. All of these items will be done parametrically for you. You do not have to go and do those singularly whatsoever. But again, for special items within the room, for single walls, for door frames, window frames, anything of that type that's an assembly per se, you would put them down below in the lower grid here. And the grid can be moved around too. We can move this up and down, so it's very, very flexible, very easy for you, the user, to use. Now, just as a point of interest, we do sort of twin the left tree with what you've got in Planswift as far as drawing location. If I were to go to another drawing here, well, then you're on the other drawing in Planswift. So it sort of mirrors, the requirement within Planswift. We also, at the same time, when we open this up, we've also kept track of all of that counting information that's in our plugin. So that also goes back directly into Planswift, okay, and you can continue to use it in Planswift or come back to our application to complete everything. If we look at the estimate, again, there's the estimate of everything that we just looked at that we've got in our painting plugin, but we mirror the information within the Planswift as well for your use if you wanted to use other features or do other work within Planswift here. But virtually we're self-sufficient within our plugin and able to maintain and report on all the information required from our plugin. So I hope you found that of interest, and we would like to see you on board with it. We'd be glad to hear from you. Thanks very much. Have a great day.